Happy Sunday, everyone. Welcome to Our Issues Birmingham. I'm delighted to have not only a very good friend of mine on today, but the former governor of the state of Alabama, Jim Folsom, as our guest. Hey, Jim.
Tommy, good to be here.
How do you do?
I'm doing great today.
You know, I hadn't seen you since the last wild turkey shootout. I think that's over now.
COVID interrupted a lot of our turkey hunts.
COVID interrupted a lot of things. COVID interrupted crooning for critters, and it's now a thing of the past as well. But we had a good run.
Certainly did.
Both crooning for critters, which you participated in.
It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. You were the star.
As it
I
should.
was a backup singer. Me and several other known people around these parts, but it was always a lot of fun and a great
Well,
cause.
today we're reversing roles, okay?
Certainly.
So I would like for you to tell the viewership how you ended up being in politics and ultimately the governor of the great state of Alabama.
I'll give it a try. It was a long time ago. I'll try to remember it. Tommy.
Do the best you can.
My father was a person named Big Jim Folsom.
Big Jim.
Who was governor of Alabama from 1947, 48 to 1954-5, and then from 1955 until 1960. So I grew up in politics from the time I was a kid. I remember political campaigns at my house being run. I remember crowds coming in and out, and I remember the old caravans. Really, it was before the time of television advertising, social media, and everything else. It was the old style of campaigning, going to courthouse squares all over the state, and there would be several thousand.
They called that stumping.
And that's what it was, the back of a flatbed pickup. So in my early days, I spent passing out cards and literature, and I was on the bumper sticker crew. I used to put on the bumper stickers, my brother and I, at the campaign stops. So I grew up in it and became accustomed to it. Always interested in politics. I majored in political science in college, political science and history. It was a sort of a natural thing, you might say. I always enjoyed it. But I really never thought about running myself until I was 27 years old. And I worked at that time, a few years out of college, for the old Reynolds Metals companies up in Florence, Alabama. I was working there, and a lot of people encouraged me to run for a seat on the Alabama Public Service Commission. Former congressman, a former professor of mine, Glenn Browder, talked to me about it, encouraged me, and I was scared to death. I said, I'm going to go out here. And my father had been out of office for quite a few years at that time, so the name ID wasn't as good as it may have been. So he talked me into it. I said, well, I finally got the courage. I said, well, I didn't want to leave my job because I had a job with public affairs and public relations at that time with the company. So I was sort of stepping out of that. But I ran and fortunately got elected in 1978. I spent 2 terms there, ran for the U.S. Senate 2 years after I was there when I was 30 years old. In 1980, won the Democratic nomination and lost a close race to Jeremiah Denton in the 1980 general election, 5,000 or 6,000 votes, which was a little bit disappointing for a fellow my age, but that's how it goes. So I went back to the Public Service Commission another couple more years. In 1986, I decided to run for lieutenant governor, and fortunately, somehow got elected. I spent from 1986 to 1992. I was there in 1993, excuse me. I was there. Took office in April of 1993 and remained there for 2 years. Was not successful in my '94 campaign, but it's been 2 years as governor. Went back into the public finance business after that for several years. Was reelected lieutenant governor once again in 2006. So I spent 4 years. I spent most of my time as lieutenant governor, really, which was all in all about 10 years.
So the years you were governor were 93
Yes,
through 95.
yes.
And that was as a result of you being, by
Yes.
attrition, moving up because of what happened to
I
Governor
left
Hunt.
that, a very important point I left out there at that time in history. The sitting governor had to vacate the office because of a court ruling. So I ascended to the office, you may say.
Well, and then we turned, the parties changed. The dynamics of the political landscape in Alabama was
They did.
changing at that time.
It was changing. The state was in a realignment. It was quite a party realignment that took place. From the first time I went into office,
We were all Democrat forever.
everyone was Southern Democrats.
Yeah.
Conservative
Didn't
by
they call
nature,
us
but
something
Democrats.
like Dixiecrats or something?
Yeah, the Democrats were Strom Thurmond and that crowd back in the 50s. But Southerners, naturally more conservative by nature, and politically inclined to be conservatives more than Northerners, you might say. But there were Southern Democrats. And over a 30-year period, the party realignment took place, and slowly but surely between 1980, really, when Ronald Reagan was in office. During that transformation, Ronald Reagan brought it on with the South slowly realigned itself into the Republican, or transitioned to Republican.
Which is where we are now.
Yeah, which majority of Southerners and Alabamians identify as Republicans. And, I'm not very partisan about it. Back in the days when I was lieutenant governor, I used to appoint Republican chairmen, and Democratic and Republican chairmen, because it was not as much partisanship.
Yeah, it was a different.
People worked together.
Politics were nicer, but we're going to talk more about that when we come back from
Sure.
break, okay?
Sure thing.
This is Our Issues Birmingham. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. We're talking to Jim Folsom, former governor of the state of Alabama. And he was telling us about how he ended up where he got to, and pretty much explain why he's got no desire to be there again, I think. Is that a fair statement?
I don't know if they'd take me again.
I don't think your wife would let you, would you?
You're exactly right. She would.
But I think the people need to know that when he became governor in 1993, from lieutenant governor promotion, his first executive order was to order that the Confederate flag, which I hope no longer sits on top of the Capitol in the state of Alabama, be removed. So long before it was fashionable, that was your idea. How was that received? Not very well.
Some people do not like that. But you have to make these tough decisions. While I was lieutenant governor, there was quite a bit of controversy during those years. You had black state representatives and leadership in the black community were making it an issue on the Capitol grounds. We had CNN coming into Montgomery about every day, and it was national news on the television set, so a lot of people became concerned about it. I'm just as proud of my Southern heritage as anyone. I had ancestors who fought for the Confederacy, like most everybody in Alabama, really, if you go back and look at it. But, you know, it'd been over 100 years since the Civil War. It had gone up in the 1960s during the Civil Rights Movement. It was this act of defiance against the federal government. I did it because basically we just need to be done. It was hurting our image nationally. It hurt our chances in economic development. We could have never recruited Mercedes-Benz to Alabama if the flag had stayed up. They would have never even put us on their list, because as much as maybe we don't like to think about it this way, the act of defiance is what the signal was to the international business community and to the rest of the nation. I think many Alabamians or Southerners take it as an act of aggression or dislike of them. It's not really that. There's a certain place for the respect and to honor the Confederate dead in our history, not to be ashamed of that heritage. But at the same time, having the Confederate flag fly above the American state flag, I don't think was appropriate at all. Right, so it needed to be done. So I was my administration was a very young administration. I was 43 years old. Everybody in my administration was basically in their 30s and 40s, early 40s. There were a few oldies. But you know, when you're a little naive and a little young and a little ambitious to get things done that you think are right, you know, you do that. And maybe being naive and a little aggressive, when you do that, you're being a little reckless politically. Yeah. Because anytime you make a move like that, it takes people out of their comfort zone sometime, and so they react against your actions at the polls. But it was the right thing to do. Well, most other southern states have done it too.
You mentioned, and I want to get into it, the road to get Mercedes here was handed to you pretty abruptly, as I understand it. It was almost not on the table. We were about to not get an opportunity to even request that they come to Alabama.
Correct.
Now, we don't have all day. So you got to give me a short version of how that happened, because it's a huge step forward that was followed by many other automobile manufacturers and supporting businesses that did nothing but generate not only attention to our state, but revenue for our state, and it has grown in leaps and bounds. I don't think in this moment we have enough time to go through it, so yes. We're going to probably spill into the next segment. Okay. So I'm hesitant to even go there just yet. I think I'm going to take a break and come back, and then we'll start from scratch with that question.
Sure.
All right? Yeah. This is Our Issues Birmingham. Don't go away. We've got some good stuff coming up for you. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. We're going to talk about how Alabama became so wrapped up in the automobile industry, particularly with such strongholds as Mercedes for starters, then Hyundai, then Honda. I don't even know what else. I think Mazda's up there too.
Yeah, it's 20% of the state GDP now. Wow. Gross domestic product.
So how'd that happen? You were in charge.
Okay, when I became governor, April 22nd, 1993. I'd been in office one day. The next day, the person that I appointed, ADO director, came to me and said,
ADO director is Alabama director.
Development Office.
Development Office.
It's Alabama Department of Commerce now.
Okay.
But it was the person in charge of economic development who I appointed, Billy Joe Camp. He said, Governor, there's a major project that I want to pursue, but I can't pursue it without your support and help. And are you interested? And I said, well, who is it? He said, well, I can't tell you that because we don't know. It goes under the project name of Operation Rosewood. And we discovered under a stack of mail the request, we have an interest. I found that stack of mail and got the answer back, we certainly would be interested in making it.
Guy Hunt had not opened the letter?
I can't blame it on Governor Hunt. I don't know if it was his staff people or what
All right,
happened.
well, go ahead.
But anyway, it's a true story.
Rosewood.
True story. And so I said, well, certainly I want to put everything we can into it. Of course, we were pretty much laughed at for even pursuing it by a lot of the local press and pundits and observers at the time, because we'd never gotten to first base with a major company like that. But we went ahead from there and pursued it. It was elimination process. They started out with 30 states. They then cut it down to 10, then 4, 2, and 1. We were in the competition with South Carolina. Went to Germany 3 times, got acquainted. We were fortunate that we had a young search team at Mercedes who had been assigned the task of choosing this site. We went through the total process of going to see them and putting our best case forward, and lo and behold, we made the top 10 cut, which we'd never done before with a firm like this. Then eventually we got it down to 3. It was a tough competition. The Carolinas were our major competition. At that time, I had to commit. I talked to my director every day. I sent him to Germany to stay involved with the operations, and he would call every day and tell us the status of things, where he thought we were. During that process, he would get information on what other states were offering. I knew that this was an opportunity for us to break the ice here. If we could somehow get through the issues of, say, our past history that they were concerned about, and they could come here and look at the state and talk to some of our German industry, Degussa and Mobile, others, and see what we were all about, we would win. I think they really made the final decision to come here because they trusted what we said. But I was faced with the issue of at that time of having to match what we were putting forth financially on the table. We knew the Carolinas had a $350 million proposal. In '93, that would be like $1 billion today, nearly, I guess. And so every time he called, I said, I affirm that offer. I said, if I knew that if we were successful in attracting this industry, that $350 million would look like chicken feed compared to the billions that would be coming into the state because of this impact. So I was pretty free-handed. Like I said, once again, I was a younger governor, and I was aggressive, and I was a little reckless politically, but I knew I had to be to accomplish this. I don't think I think the biggest surprise was after we were successful, and the announcement came. The criticism that emerged then, because my opponents actually ran on that.
That you gave away too much money.
Too much money for the plant. Too much money. Gave away money to Mercedes.
And when you say gave away, he's talking about incentives and rebates and things of that nature.
Yeah, it was not cash to them, but that was the infrastructure, the road work, the tax incentives that we put forward amounted to that much overall. We didn't hand them cash. It was infrastructure work that had to be done by the state.
Well, there's obviously so much more we could talk about. We might have to have you back again because we're not going to have time to go into what came after that. But as we all know, once Mercedes came, other automobile industries started to come, and now, as you put it, we're 20% of our gross, what'd you call it, GDP?
GDP, state gross domestic product, which is
It's fascinating.
pretty much what.
Well, thank you. Thank you for paving the way for that, and thank you for.
Well, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
You don't want to do it again.
I would. Yeah, I had to make those decisions. The flag and the Mercedes project, historically, they're positive, and it's been good for the state.
You're a good man.
You know, what you're supposed to do when you're down there. You're supposed to do these things.
Well, you should whisper in somebody else's ear. We appreciate you being with us today. This has been most informative. We will have Governor Folsom back one day to follow up on some of these things. This is Our Issues Birmingham. We will see you next week.
I am blind, but I need not see. I know this road is there for me.
I think it's just vapor and flavors. It won't hurt my kid like cigarettes.
Get your head out of the cloud. Talk to your kid about vaping. Visit talkaboutvaping.org.
When I first saw a turtle, my heart was full. Now I'm anything but lonely.
We have this deep connection, this heart connection.
He just wants to be close to you and part of your life.
Every day with Turtle is a perfect day.
When I'm holding her, it makes me feel calmer.
I think everything he does shows how much he loves us.
When we adopt a shelter pet,
We discover
they're a little bit of a lot of things.
But they're all pure love.
Hang on! Something unforgettable is coming to Comet. Live long and prosper. It's the first annual Comet Fest.
Got it. Beam me up. Find it on your digital dial on 21.3.